Just a few years ago, when the Republicans had the majority in the state house, energy prices were very low. And because of bad policies, one at the federal level, the Green New Deal was a huge, they should have called it the drive up your energy cost deal, because that was a terrible thing that the federal government did and really drove. And now we're seeing what bad policies lead to these energy cost increases. Hi, this is State Representative Doyle Heffley, and welcome back to this edition of Talking with Doyle. I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Representative David Rowe of the 85th District, that is Snyder County, and you also have a couple of other counties, but you chair the Republican Policy Committee for the Republican Caucus here in Harrisburg, and I want to talk a little bit about one of the most pressing issues that we have right now in our Commonwealth, and that is the cost of energy, utility costs. It's really hurting families, people on fixed incomes, businesses, and is really driving up the cost of everything that we do in this Commonwealth.
Yeah, and thank you very much for having me, Doyle. It's great to be here. But you're exactly right. People don't realize how much energy costs impact everything, right? When you think energy costs, you think your utility bill, and that's true. But energy costs also impact what you're paying at grocery stores, because what it takes logistically to manufacture those foods, to deliver those foods, to process and package those foods, all takes energy. You look at, obviously putting gas in your car and traveling and home construction and manufacturing, the goods you pay, things you buy at the hardware store, all of these things take energy to create. So when everything gets more and more expensive, energy costs going up is one of the largest drivers of that.
And if you look back just a few years ago, when the Republicans had the majority in the state house, and when you go back to energy prices were very low, to the point where 3 Mile Island shut down because they could not sell electricity because it was so cheap. Natural gas prices were very low. We had we were getting a lot of electricity and our natural gas, and because of bad policies, one at the federal level, the Green New Deal was a huge. They should have called it the drive up your energy cost deal, because that was a terrible thing that the federal government did and really drove. And now we're seeing what bad policies lead to these energy cost increases. But also in our Commonwealth, started with Wolf and into Shapiro, wanting to force our Commonwealth into the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. We haven't seen a new electric generating facility built in this Commonwealth in 8 years. Meanwhile, you had President Biden, who was running around saying we're going to have total electrification. It's great to conserve energy. We have LED lights, but we can't conserve our way out of this, because if you think about every household right now is using more electricity than ever before. Maybe they're plugging in their car, they're plugging in their phone, they're plugging in their earbuds, they're plugging in their iPad. All these things that we didn't have years ago, a Ring doorbell using power all day, all those little things, really have driven up the amount of energy we use. And, we had the push to electrification. And that's all well and good if you have enough electricity. Mm-hmm. Now, you've done a lot of hearings across the Commonwealth, worked with PJM, really interesting hearings. And if you want to talk a little bit about what led us to the issues we're having with our grid right now.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head. The fact that we haven't, right, it's supply and demand. It's basic economics. That carries over into energy too. What you said is exactly right. No new generation since Governor Wolf unilaterally entered us into the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which, just for your viewers, ultimately was like $1 billion energy tax.
I think it was close to about $2.5 billion. It would have been an energy tax, and that would have been on top of your utility
Correct.
rates.
So
it's just crazy.
What generator wants to come here and spend the 5 years it takes to get a permit and the billions of dollars it takes to stand up a power plant, and then to be taxed billions of dollars on top of that, when they could just go to West Virginia and deal with none of that and have the power plant up and running in a year? So that's why Pennsylvania saw no new generation. And when you have more supply, like you said, we're consuming more energy than ever before with more demand than ever before, with less supply than ever before. Of course, prices are going to go up. One of the most interesting things we did with the policy committee this session was we established the Mid-Atlantic Energy Alliance, and we brought in legislators from Maryland, New Jersey, Virginia. We just had a member from Delaware join the alliance, and we held, first of all, a hearing in last October in Harrisburg with legislators from all these states. Then we held a follow-up hearing in Annapolis, in the Maryland state capital, talking about the impacts of bad policy on energy prices. Maryland is still in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. They have shuttered 14, 16 at least power plants, eliminating 4,000 megawatts of electricity. And as a result, they have to import 40% of their power from Pennsylvania.
Yep.
New Jersey has to import over 30% of their power from Pennsylvania. Virginia has to import almost 40% of their power from Pennsylvania. So the fact that we're a third to half of the energy needs of our neighboring states is being subsidized by Pennsylvania energy is what is driving up prices too.
Yep.
Because when you are increasing the demand by other states decreasing their supply, all of our rates end up going up. We are subsidizing the bad energy policies, not just of the Biden administration, but of our neighboring states like Virginia, New Jersey, and Maryland.
And our governor, Shapiro, is pursuing those same policies. I mean, if you think about it, 42% of the electricity that goes into Maryland is coming from Pennsylvania. We are competing with those entities in Maryland for our energy, and that's why our costs are going up. And Pennsylvania has always been an exporter of electricity. And with the early shuttering of a lot of our coal-fired power plants because of policies coming out of Washington has really put us behind the eight ball in that. But I find it ironic that, the self-righteous, crusaders in these other states, we're going to stop all of our carbon generation of energy, and they shut down their power plants. And then they just get the power from Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. Now, look, we can easily sell them power, but we need to increase that power. Look, we are a net exporter of electricity and a lot of other energy, and that's not a bad thing when because we're making money on those other states. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, we need to keep up with that generation. And natural gas is much cleaner. It uses a lot less water, which is another key to generate that electricity. And we here in this Commonwealth really stand poised to be that generation for our neighboring states. But at the end of the day, they also need to be responsible to their own public as far as letting them know why the prices are going so high.
One of the most interesting studies I saw back, thankfully we got out of RGGI last year. We finally left RGGI here in Pennsylvania. Generators are finally looking to come back. It's a great thing. But one of the most interesting studies I saw a couple of years ago while Pennsylvania was still litigating RGGI was that Pennsylvania's shift to natural gas lowered our emissions. Meanwhile, you had RGGI states like New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, and their emissions went down slower than Pennsylvania's, and their costs went up more. Mm-hmm. Pennsylvania's costs went down at that point, and our emissions went down faster. Yep. So that just shows you that embracing a clean source of energy like natural gas is the true pathway, whether you care about the economic impact and emissions or you care about the economic impact and costs on consumers. Natural gas, of which we have enough. We just had the oil and gas day in the Capitol Rotunda yesterday, and one of the speakers shared that Pennsylvania has enough energy supply to power all of Great Britain, right? Like, that's how much energy we have. We're the second largest natural gas producing state after Texas. We're the Saudi Arabia of America. We have so many resources here. We just can't pull it out of the ground and generate it. If we were able to actually undo the last 8 years of RGGI that chased away generators, and if we actually embraced our heritage industries of energy generation, we would see a massive decrease in utility bills all across the board.
And that's the key, because at the end of the day, people that live here in Pennsylvania, we were talking a little bit earlier, every business is impacted by those energy costs. Whether you're going to the grocery store, you look at just the tourism industry, just the ski areas alone, and your water parks, the amount of electricity that they used, and that brings in billions of dollars to the state. And we want those tourism opportunities, but we need energy to fuel that. But at the end of the day, when you have people that are on a fixed income, you see, their tax increases going up, and the governor, we got him to agree to get out of RGGI. He's still pushing RGGI, and we have a lot of Democrats that signed on to legislation that essentially is a utility tax on your electricity rates. So we just need to really push forth policies where we're going to develop. And when we talk about developing energy, I'm not talking about throwing out the rule book for environmental protections, because Republicans breathe the same air and drink the same water as Democrats and independents and everybody else. So we all need to look at this and say, in Pennsylvania, we have some of the most stringent environmental regulations. So when we're producing energy, we're doing it much cleaner than other states, and certainly much cleaner than China. Mm-hmm. So as we look to onshore so much of our manufacturing that has left our country and bringing that back into Pennsylvania, we can do that, but we have to have sound energy policy. And that's one of the things that I really want to commend you on your leadership with the policy committee, and our caucus has really been pushing that. It's not about, throwing out environmental regulations. It's about how can we safely extract our natural resources? How can we produce electricity? How can we build transmission lines where we're not losing as much electricity between point A to point B? Because right now we lose about 20% just in transportation. How do we build a reliable grid? And investments in wind and solar have shown to be nothing but cost generators for the grid and for the utility, for people at the end of the day that are paying that utility. So and it's interesting, solar and wind, and I hope that someday we can get to the point where I can have solar panels on my ceiling and I don't have to pay an electric bill anymore. That would be awesome, right? And I think we'll get there at some point, but we're not there right now, and government isn't going to force us to get there. Private sector will come up with that. We see some of the Tesla, some of the things that they're doing. But at the end of the day, we really need to focus on bringing down utility costs for ratepayers, whether they be businesses or those private individuals. Because when people come to my district office or go to your district office and they're applying for LIHEAP, which is the heating assistance program, for the utility bills, and I hear people come in and say, I can't afford to heat my house. I have electric heat. I can't afford to heat my house because the electric rates are going up so high. And bad energy policies coming from this administration and the previous administration in D.C. have really done that. We need to unravel that. We need to work on sound policies to bring down those costs.
And you're exactly right. I mean, we truly are the conservationists, right? We are the ones. I have a very rural district. I have 4 counties. I have woods and rivers and creeks and farmlands. I, of course, want that to be a pristine environment. I want waterways full of fish. I want woods full of wildlife. I want young generations of hunters and fishermen to have a lot of opportunities to enjoy different sporting opportunities. And when you look at the contrast of, if you visit, up in your neck of the woods, the northern tier, there's lots of, well pads, whether it's unconventional or conventional.
Well, we have coal,
you have
Carbon
coal
County, but we don't have we don't have any natural gas well pads. But where you're going with this is really important. You look at the footprint of a natural gas pad and the amount of power BTUs that come out of there, right, to generate power and heat, compared to clear cutting 600 acres or 1,000 acres of pristine forest to put up solar panels that are loaded with PFAS, by the way, and only generate intermittent power, which does nothing to help our grid. Nothing. Our grid is built for base load. You would have to totally redesign our grid and build huge battery facilities. You think data centers and warehouses are large? Wait till they try to put these these huge battery facilities in everybody's backyard. And that's something that we're missing when we talk about green energy. But natural gas, when that well pad is done, it's cleared out. And you wouldn't even know it's there, and we're producing a lot of energy. Even
already there, most people don't know they're there, right? Because they're a couple of acres, and they are American energy, American jobs, American generators. You look at the solar panel market, and exactly what you said, you're clear-cutting forests, you are covering pristine farmland. 85% of the world's solar panels are made in China. And most of China, most of their rare earth mineral mining is done in Africa using child labor. And most of the panel manufacturing happens in slave camps in China. So that's the environmentalist crowd. When I talk to them about, hey, if you want to put solar panels on your roof and it brings down your utility, I'm all about that. But let's not pretend that by shutting down our natural gas industry and subsidizing Chinese slave trade, that somehow we're doing something healthy for the environment when, like you said, solar panels are not reliable. If the sun's not shining, there's no power. We're importing panels from China that don't have a permanent lifespan. And unlike a well pad, when you decommission that, shut it down, plant some trees, you never knew it was there. Those solar panels, they end up in a landfill.
And there's all kinds of bonding requirements that the state has in place for any kind of, whether it be oil or natural gas or any kind of development like that to restore. But I think it's really important when people look at when I get to that utility bill at the end of the day, why are these rates going up? Know that your utility companies, they don't generate electricity. They're buying electricity to put onto the grid through PJM. And there's a lot of complexities in that. But at the end of the day, because of bad policies that are limiting how much energy we produce, is driving up the cost. And if we want to continue down that road of higher utility costs, then we could vote for Josh Shapiro, some of his legislation that he has out there, which are nothing but energy taxes and limiting baseload energy production.
Yep. Well, thank you, Doyle, for having me. I want to say thank you very much. You've been here in the House longer than I have. You have been a stalwart advocate for common sense things like American-made energy to bring down your utility costs on families, on business owners. And I just want to thank you for your tireless efforts on behalf of your constituents.